protest movements against the government's judicial overhaul plan set to escalate later today in what they're calling a national day of disruption. It comes as the Israeli parliament set to discuss which committee would host discussions of two bills that passed their preliminary readings and will prepare them for their reading of the remaining plenum votes before they become law. A long list of demonstrations, protests, and marches planned around the country, along with temporary strikes at schools and workplaces. Blocking of roads also happening near the homes of coalition lawmakers. National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir responding to today's events after a security assessment with police, saying that his policy is to remove what he calls anarchist blockades and to not harm the routine of life. Let's head to Jerusalem now, where our very own I-24 News senior correspondent Owen Alterman is there for us at the Knesset. That's the Israeli parliament. Owen, talk to us about what specifically in these bills that people are protesting.
Right. Well, Namda, two specific things in the particular bill that's before the Constitution Committee this morning. I'll tell you a little bit about that hearing in a second. One, a rule that would raise the bar for Supreme Court judges to strike down a law, and it would require a 80% majority, 12 out of 15 of the Supreme Court justices in order to do so. That is a change, we should say, from an original proposal that had actually put out that it should be unanimous, 15 out of 15. And also on the table, of course, that override clause that's gotten so much attention, enabling 61 out of the 120 members of Knesset, those who serve in this building, to be able to override a Supreme Court decision and to re-legislate a law. So essentially, if a law were passed, Hamdan, and the Supreme Court struck it down, then through a vote of 61 out of 120 members of parliament, that law could go back on the books. Those are the parts of this judicial overhaul that this morning are before what's known as the Constitution Committee here. I was there in the hearing. As you can imagine, emotions are running high. Some of the opposition members of parliament are asking questions and making their points through their statements. Others are looking more towards making a point by getting kicked out, essentially, and basically raising their voices and essentially daring Committee Chairman Simcha Rothman of the Religious Zionism Party to throw them out of the meeting. That's happened in a number of cases. I will add, Hamda, that on a personal note, it's been a bit surreal. I was, as you know, and as you saw, and as viewers may have seen, stuck at a roadblock on the way to Jerusalem, a wildcat roadblock set up by protesters on the way, and reported from there. And I had this sense that once I got into this building, put on the suit and tie, and went to the committee meeting, that the protests would be a bit in the background and it would be more about the legislating. But you go into that committee hearing and you look and you watch the members of parliament yelling at each other, literally, as is part of the parliamentary culture here in Israel sometimes. And it almost feels like a continuum of the protest, right? Those protesters there on the streets with their strong emotions and their passions, and then the members of parliament in that committee hearing with their passions and their voices raised just as loud.
We have some live images of that Constitutional Committee. Control Room, if you could put those back up for us, discussing the reading. Owen, historically, we have seen people storming the tables, screaming, yelling. What's expected today? Is there any move from the opposition to try and stop the bills from heading to the Knesset floor?
Obviously, they're going to try, Hamda, and they are trying, and the vote is expected, and obviously the coalition would be expected to win it. What I can say is the room itself is cordoned off, so it will be very, very hard for any kind of activists to be able to get in and to disrupt the scene. Journalists, of course, as we should be, are allowed in. But obviously, the members of parliament are doing it themselves. They know that this is being televised. They know that this is being watched. And some of them, I think, see a political advantage in being able to show their passions to their constituents by yelling and by getting kicked out. Obviously, there are differences of opinion, I think, about what's the best way to handle a situation like that. If it's better to do that, or it's better to ask questions and try to make your advocacy points through your own statements. But at any rate, that's part of the parliamentary culture here in Israel. It was certainly done by the parties now in the coalition while they were in opposition over the course of a year. So it's part of the rules of the game here, part of some committee hearings, although by no means all, but committee hearings on highly charged subjects that get a lot of public attention, that have a strong ideological basis. You do often see this. But again, we are expecting the vote in the committee this morning to send those bills back to the Knesset plenum for their next vote. Hamda, there's still a long procedural road for these bills to get to the finish line and to become law. But as we know, this coalition, at least to this point, has shown itself to be very determined to be pushing forward on a fast track. We should say there has been an offer to put this on the back burner for a week in order for there to be discussions. So far rejected by the opposition, not not seeing this as a real kind of postponement, but rather something that is being done over what might ordinarily be a break for the Purim holiday next week. So we'll have to see how this all plays out, but obviously passions are just as high inside the committee room as they are on the streets.
I-24 News senior correspondent Owen Alterman live for us at the Israeli parliament. Thank you. Let's head to Tel Aviv now, where our Nicole Zedek is there in the midst of one of those protests. Nicole, good morning. Talk to us about the plan for blocking roads and what you're seeing now. I can see there's a few more people behind you than in the last hour. What's the latest?
Good morning, Hamda. It is just electric out here in Tel Aviv. The march from Dizengoff Square just started at 10 o'clock as people flooded the streets. And as you said, you can hear just the energy out here as people take to the streets in protest. Plenty of people even take a look at some of these road closures. This road wasn't supposed to be blocked off, so we have plenty of traffic just at a standstill right here as protesters block off. These people can't get through to go around Dizengoff Center, Dizengoff Square. They are stuck right here as these protesters are heading towards the Habima Theater, towards Kaplan Street. This is just one of the many demonstrations planned all throughout Tel Aviv today and all throughout Israel, really. In fact, it's a national day of disruption. That's what the organizers are calling it as. And you can see there's plenty of disruption happening right here in Tel Aviv. In the next hour, we're also expecting to see some high-tech demonstrations at Sarona Market. We're expecting to see more people, students protesting. In fact, I spoke with one elementary school teacher who brought his students out here to get a first-hand look at what democracy is like.
Walk us through what these people want to see as a result of their protests. You're there talking to people. What's the main point they're trying to get across?
The main point is that they are really trying to fight for their democracy. That is what they want people to see. As you can hear the chants behind me with their megaphones, and the many people want to bring their kids out here to see exactly what people are really fighting for. Here's what one elementary school teacher had to say.
We took our kids out of school today to teach them about democracy. We're concerned about the new legislation that the government is leading, which we feel is undermining democracy. It's the legislation is trying to erode human rights and trying to erode the power of the judicial system to monitor legislation, to monitor the parliament, and so on.
So as you can see, a lot of passion out here as people, old and young, are taking to the streets. Many people want to show their children what they're out here fighting for in their hands, fighting for their own democracy here in Israel as they protest against this planned judicial overhaul. So the energy out here, not only in Tel Aviv, we are seeing this all throughout the country from the south to the north as people take to the streets and protest for what they want to see happen in our government.